There's a lot to be said in this particular chapter, but I've condensed it down to those verses read by Mary, read very beautifully. And so the title of this reflection is, You Just Can't Please Some People. From a scientific point of view, there's an interesting difference between light and sound. Sound doesn't travel in straight lines the way light does. Sound goes around corners very easily, whereas light shines only where it's directed. So the Jesus invitation in this chapter comes through music, because sound and therefore music travels round corners. Focusing on Jesus as the light admits the possibility that light may not reach some hooks and crannies, simply because other things get in the way, or the light was not pointed in the right direction. This is not the case with the invitation through music, which gets round obstacles very easily. So a celebratory lifestyle of eating and drinking would normally have brought one into bad company. And we learn that from something like the prodigal son, the so-called prodigal son. So it's not surprising to read the full accusation here. They call Jesus a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Now, this accusation was actually really quite serious, because it meant that this person was failing to live up to the expected standards of restrained piety. Listen to what the book of Deuteronomy says. If someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father and mother, who does not heed when they discipline him, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders of his town at the gate of that place. They shall say to the elders of the town, This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the town shall stone him to death. So shall you purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel will hear and be afraid. I wonder if the people who say we should go back to the Bible would include this kind of thing. Hands up if you've ever had a rebellious teenager in your house. Are they still alive? You didn't take them out and stone them to death? It's pretty gruesome, isn't it? We should stop pointing fingers at Muslims and look at our own scriptures. So, this label, glutton and drunkard, is far more serious than it first appears. If Jesus is in fact a glutton and a drunkard by the standards of Deuteronomy, then God's law prescribes that he should die a violent and dishonorable death. Maybe this verse gives a hint of what was to come, a violent death, not by stoning, but by crucifixion. But is it possible that both John and Jesus, quite different in their spiritualities, were sent so that everyone of whatever moral persuasion might hear the invitation? Does the dance image depict Jesus and the mourning image match John? Because both images would traditionally have been associated with special meals, wakes, and weddings. Jesus was not only fond of feasting, he also employed this image throughout his teaching. If you read through the Gospels, you'll see that some of Jesus' most crucial teachings was around a meal, not in a lecture hall. The whole of Jesus, the focus of Jesus' famous last act of love was this, the communion table, a meal shared with his friends. And personally, I'm of the persuasion that joy and thanksgiving should be at the heart of communion rather than solemnity. But that's another whole story. The religious wise who go about seriously trying to protect God have missed the point. Jesus' deeds of mercy and acts of compassion are evidence of God's will. That was what Jesus was conveying to John's messengers in those early verses. What do you see? The blind being healed, people walking, people being invited to eat. But he knew that at the same time he was reaping the fury of those who took so seriously that they took other scriptures so seriously that they missed the point of what Jesus was saying. So the paradigm has changed. It's no longer that we have to somehow earn enough moral, spiritual, or ethical brownie points to get into heaven. Heaven is open to all, one and all, saint and sinner. The table is spread. The band is playing. Do we want to join in, or do we want to stand outside, complaining that the doors are too wide, the music's too noisy, and we don't like the company that Jesus is keeping? There is something more serious than the immorality of the feasts. It's the denial of the miracles of compassion. Colin Gibson wrote a hymn, a Christmas hymn called The Welcome Carol, and he did this in direct response to what was happening in the Dunedin parish at that time. And these are the words of the first three verses, that were the choruses. Open, open, open the stable door. Welcome, welcome, the baby's born. Enter, enter, join in the celebration. Fear not, there is room for us all. There's a flock of sheep and a cow and a donkey. Welcome, welcome. Here's a puffing shepherd, 3 wise men wonky. Welcome, welcome. What a crowd of folk come to see the baby. Welcome, welcome. One of them is drunk and another crazy. Welcome, welcome. Fallen off the back of a skip just lately. Welcome, welcome. Feeling rather bruised, yes, and shook up greatly. Welcome, welcome. They'd had people come to their Christmas service who were obviously drunk. Should they turn them away or just say, welcome, come in? And when this verse where it says, fallen off the back of a skip just lately, welcome, welcome, it was in response to what had been written in the Otago Daily Times that said, we should get a skip and all these gays and homosexuals and lesbians should be thrown in the skip and taken to the dump. That was in the Otago Daily Times. So Colin wrote, fallen off the back of a skip just lately. Welcome, welcome. Feeling rather bruised and shook up greatly. Welcome, welcome. Would you like it if someone said all the Scots should be put in a skip and taken to the dump? Or all those born in the north of England or somewhere else? It was amazing, actually. For the rest of this chapter, Jesus blasts out woes against the cities who haven't welcomed and responded to him or his messengers. He sounds far more like John the Baptizer, reproaching them, mentioning Sodom and Gomorrah and Chorazin and Bethsaida, places where they'd been turned away and hadn't been responsive to the gospel. But that's not the note on which I want to end, because Jesus' final words in this chapter are to those who have heeded the call. When Jesus had said, welcome, they have come. And then he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This was the message that John the Baptizer could not understand. Jesus was saying, everyone is welcome. Come.